Archaeologists have discovered a huge ancient city hidden underground in Mexico, which may give a better understanding of the Maya civilization.
They were never meant to find it. For over 1,000 years, it lay hidden, sealed in stone, smothered in jungle, and untouched by human hands. Not a myth, not a ruin. A real Mayan tomb, locked away beneath the unforgiving canopy of Guatemala. And when the archaeologists finally opened it, the silence inside screamed louder than words. What they found rewrote history, and no one is ready for what comes next. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story only gets stranger the deeper we go. It all began in the dense, suffocating green of northeastern Guatemala. A team from Tulane University, led by the relentless Francisco Estrada Belli, wasn't searching for treasure. They were mapping the invisible. Using LiDAR, laser pulses that penetrate trees, vines, and centuries of camouflage, they scanned what looked like nothing and uncovered everything. Buried beneath the ancient city of Xochicaltam, the data revealed something no one expected. An architectural anomaly. Not a pyramid, not a plaza, a void, hollow space, perfectly rectangular, deliberately hidden. A tomb. But when the team reached the site on foot, they made a chilling discovery. A looter's tunnel, rough, sloppy, and dangerously close to the chamber, cut into the earth. But by sheer luck, or fate, the tunnel stopped just inches short of the sacred wall. One more swing of a pickaxe, and the tomb would have been violated forever. But it wasn't. For over 1,000 years, this chamber had waited, sealed, silent, intact. They cracked the seal with surgical precision. Dust spilled out. Air that hadn't moved in a millennium hissed across their skin. Then came the collapse. A portion of the tomb's ceiling had caved in long ago, but instead of destroying its contents, the rubble had preserved them, protecting the sacred core from moisture, insects, even time itself. And then they saw it. A jade mask, fragmented, but unmistakably divine. Carved bones, spondylus shells glowing orange in the torchlight. This wasn't looted. This wasn't desecrated. This was ceremonial perfection. Every item exactly where it was placed 1,000 years ago. It wasn't a burial. It was a blueprint for resurrection. But the real shock came when they realized what, or rather, who, they might be looking at. Initial readings of the hieroglyphs hinted at a royal name long lost to history. Itzam Kokaj Balam. Not found in codices, not mentioned in stelae. A ghost king, a ruler without a throne. Was he erased? Hidden? Or did this tomb mark the final resting place of a secret power no one had dared acknowledge? Artifacts weren't dumped. They were arranged. Bone to the west, shell to the east. The mask directly above the skull. Even the ceremonial vessels had orientation. Experts immediately recognized the alignment as deeply spiritual, mirroring the Maya's belief in cosmic order, life after death, and the divine cycle of kingship. But the deeper they looked, the stranger it got. One artifact stopped everyone cold. A carved object unlike anything ever found in Mayan tombs. No match in any museum, codex, or archive. Its symbolism didn't fit. Its material didn't belong. Even veteran epigraphers paused. Interpretation stopped. Something was off. And then came the bones. Human femurs, carefully carved with intricate glyphs. Not just names, genealogies. Power etched into calcium. The lineage traced back generations, connecting the buried ruler to deities, warriors, and, perhaps most shockingly, other known dynasties in Tikal and beyond. The jade mask, painstakingly reconstructed, revealed even more. A mosaic face, likely representing Chak, the storm god, his mouth open in perpetual roar, the divine force of rain and destruction. Why would a ruler be buried beneath the face of a storm? Was he a god-king, a bringer of chaos, or a sacrificial offering himself? Spondylus shells, harvested from the Pacific Ocean, hundreds of miles away, lined the burial floor. In Maya belief, they weren't decoration. They symbolized blood, regeneration, and sacred power. Their presence here confirmed that this burial wasn't just royal, it was supernatural. And then came the ceramics, vessels still sealed, residue inside. Later analysis would reveal traces of fermented chocolate and maize, the sacred drinks of Maya elites, consumed during coronations, offerings, and transitions into the divine realm. This wasn't a dinner. It was a ritual, a royal's final communion with the gods. Everything in the chamber, every stone, shard, and symbol, screamed intention. The layout wasn't random. It was cosmic choreography, earthly materials arranged to mimic the architecture of the universe, the underworld below, the heavens above, and at the center, a king, becoming myth. But none of it answered the central question. Why was this king buried here, in the shadows of Chochkitam, a site long thought to be minor, even peripheral? And why was his name missing from the known record? To understand that, we have to look closer, beyond the bones and artifacts, into the sacred language etched in every corner. They weren't just laying a body to rest. They were writing a sacred equation, coded in jade, bone, shell, and stone. Every inch of that tomb wasn't just ceremonial, it was symbolic. Rituals weren't performed above ground. They were embedded in the architecture itself. The jade mask wasn't randomly placed. It was positioned directly above the carved femurs, as if the divine face hovered over mortal lineage. The god over the man, the cosmos over the king. A visual declaration that this wasn't just a ruler, it was a hybrid being, suspended between flesh and eternity. Even in death, he ruled both realms. Short inscriptions carved onto the bones added another layer. They didn't just name him, they tethered him, geographically and spiritually, to multiple Maya regions. Tikal, Rio Azul, and possibly even Calakmul. Titles hinted at ambassadorial roles, warrior status, and priestly functions. This wasn't a local noble. This was a political web stitched into ritual fabric. Each object, each material, was carefully selected, not just for meaning, but for interaction. Jade for the gods, bone for the ancestors, shell for fertility, ceramic for offerings. Their placement told a story, a spiritual journey mapped in mineral and marrow, a journey not just through the afterlife, but through the mythos of Mayan kingship. The layout was symmetrical, two sides mirroring each other perfectly. No gaps, no clutter, a masterwork of ceremonial precision. The tomb wasn't a container, it was a portal, a stage upon which cosmic transformation was enacted. Above the body, the ceiling sloped upward, mimicking the arch of the heavens. Below the bones, packed earth, symbolizing the underworld. It wasn't metaphor, it was cosmology made physical. And yet, none of this would have been possible to even glimpse without the cold, pulsing eye of technology. Thousands of years after the last ceremony ended, LiDAR made the jungle transparent. Laser pulses scanned thousands of acres, slicing through the thick canopy, bouncing back topographical secrets long buried. What looked like forest from above was revealed to be a city grid. Pyramids, reservoirs, walls, ceremonial roads, and then that void. That single anomaly in the scan, the break in elevation, the hollow in the earth, marked the tomb. A hole in the past made visible by future tools. And ironically, It was a looter's tunnel, dug and abandoned in desperation, that preserved the chamber by almost reaching it, but stopping just short. A human error turned cosmic favor. When the team overlaid the new LiDAR maps with century-old expedition sketches, the disconnect became clear. Entire complexes had been misinterpreted. Whole timelines built on incomplete data now had to be rewritten. Chochkitam wasn't a minor site. It was a hub. A spiritual and possibly political center that had flown under the radar for centuries, literally and figuratively. But the scans were only the beginning. Ground-penetrating radar followed. It confirmed the tomb's orientation, angled with astronomical precision, aligned perhaps with celestial events or solstices. Beneath collapsed structures, the radar revealed the full extent of the burial chamber's reach. And even more anomalies. More voids. More potential burials. To ensure nothing was lost, 3D photogrammetry was employed. Every inch of the tomb, every bone, every shard, digitally preserved down to the micron. Even if future disasters strike, earthquakes, collapse, erosion, the tomb will survive in data. A digital afterlife for a physical one. Scholars from across the globe now study the chamber without ever stepping foot inside it. But one question still lingered. How had this structure survived at all? The answer was in the stone. The tomb was built from limestone blocks, cut without industrial tools, set without excessive mortar. Yet it had stood for over a millennium, its weight balanced, its sacred geometry intact. The engineering was deliberate, pressure distributed across intersecting planes, load-bearing walls hidden behind decorative facades. This wasn't primitive guesswork. This was precision. The collapsed ceiling, rather than being a flaw, may have been part of its preservation. The slabs fell inward, creating a shield over the core. Rain couldn't reach the offerings. Insects couldn't penetrate the sediment. Even the burial's scent, that final sacred exhale, remained trapped in the chamber's silence. But why seal it so quickly? Stratigraphy revealed signs of haste. The upper stones weren't as polished, the soil packed too tightly. Some experts now believe the burial occurred during a period of unrest, perhaps a coup, invasion, or internal schism. The sealing wasn't just ceremonial, it was urgent, protective, desperate to shield not just a body, but an idea. And the date? Radiocarbon analysis of the organic remains, combined with ceramic typology and stratified charcoal, places the tomb's construction around 350 CE, the heart of the classic period, a time when Maya dynasties rose, merged, and were erased within decades. This ruler, Itsam Kokajbahlam, may have stood at the nexus of one such collision. A king made sacred in life, hidden in death, and now resurrected in discovery. But the tomb's engineering goes beyond utility. Its design isn't just strong, it's sacred. Every measurement mirrors cosmological models. The chamber is triple-tiered, mirroring the Maya worldview of underworld, earthly realm, and sky. The entrance faces a specific point, perhaps toward a constellation or the rising sun on a solstice. Nothing is random. Every angle is a prayer. This wasn't a monument meant to fade, it was a broadcast, encoded in architecture, waiting for the right moment to be heard. And then the glyphs began to speak. They weren't just markings, they were maps. Names etched into jade, bone, and limestone, names that hadn't appeared in any known record. Full dynasties, lineages that stretched beyond the city itself. Some even traced back to Tikal, the towering city-state that once dominated the Maya world. One name appears again and again, not in triumph, but in relation, in echoes. Itsam Kokaj Bahlam, He isn't listed on the Great Stele. No monuments bear his likeness. And yet, the threads keep pointing back. Ancestral links, ceremonial parallels. Was he a lost branch of the Tikal dynasty? A shadow prince exiled before coronation? Or something far more dangerous? A rival king erased by design? The design of the jade mask offers even more clues. Its angular eyes, obsidian inlays, and sharply stylized contours mirror not only local Mayan craftsmanship, but bear eerie similarity to iconography found at Teotihuacan, hundreds of miles away in central Mexico. This isn't coincidence, it's influence, a deliberate infusion of style, meaning cultural contact at the highest levels. Was Itzam Kokaj a local king under foreign influence? A diplomat? Or was this tomb the smoking gun of a far deeper truth, that Maya and Teotihuacano elites shared bloodlines, belief systems, or even political marriages? And then there's the bones, not just human remains, curated relics. Some femurs appeared older than the burial itself, polished, carved, ritually treated. Ancestral relics, passed down like royal jewels. Bones not just as remains, but as political symbols, proof of legitimacy, of divine right, of ancestry that spanned dynasties. One femur bore glyphs that referenced not Chochquitam, but cities farther west. Another bone, possibly from a woman, was placed beside the king's head, perhaps a consort or matriarch, now reduced to symbolism. In Maya culture, ancestors weren't memories. They were living forces, present, watching, empowering. And this is where the tomb stops being a burial and starts looking like a declaration. Everything, from the spondylus shells to the mask's placement, reads like propaganda carved in silence, a campaign in stone, a message encoded for those who would one day rediscover it. The spondylus shells, found throughout the chamber, weren't local. They came from the Pacific coast, hundreds of miles away, crossing mountain passes and enemy territories. This implies not just wealth, but vast trade networks. Either through alliance, tribute, or conquest, these shells marked the king's reach. Each token, vessel, and carved object forms a visual language, one meant to communicate status, lineage, and spiritual authority. The chocolate residue in ceremonial cups isn't just dietary trivia. It's sacred context. Cacao wasn't dessert. It was ritual. A drink consumed by gods and kings during moments of transformation, coronation, death, resurrection. And here's the brilliance. Every item serves two purposes, literal and symbolic, food and offering, shell and blood, aesthetic and cosmic. This isn't art, it's code. And the entire tomb is a transmission, not for the afterlife, for the living, a broadcast of royal legitimacy, sealed in the earth and aimed at eternity. But the real twist? It isn't inside the tomb, it's outside. Archaeologists widened the excavation zone, and what they found shattered assumptions again. Just beyond the burial chamber, a line of stone markers encircled the tomb like a silent army. Many were stained with red ochre, iron-based pigment often used in blood symbolism, fertility rituals, and protective rites. These weren't gravestones, they were boundaries, a perimeter of sacred protection. Soil samples taken from just beyond the markers revealed something extraordinary: elevated levels of phosphorus and nitrogen, the chemical fingerprints of organic waste, burned offerings, food remnants, perhaps even blood. This wasn't accidental. It was the residue of activity, feasting, sacrifice, or both. Not by royalty, by the people. Evidence suggests the site hosted communal ritual after the burial, a public interface with elite death. The king's tomb was private, but the surrounding area became theater, a gathering place, where the sacred and the civic collided. Further in the dirt, archaeologists uncovered fragments of shell, not the spondylus from the burial, but smaller, whiter shells from freshwater mollusks. These weren't luxury imports, they were local, and they were crushed, scattered, burned, used not as status markers, but as ritual tokens, signs of mass participation. Carbonized feathers were also recovered, so delicate they nearly crumbled on contact. Their iridescence gone, but their meaning intact. Most likely from quetzals or turkeys, they would have symbolized fertility, sky deities, or celestial motion. Combined with the ochre and phosphorus, the feather remains point to complex ceremonies layered over time. Not one event. Many. A sacred cycle of commemoration. And then, the clay tokens. Dozens of them. Undecorated, no glyphs, no paint. Just crude, hand-molded discs buried shallow in the soil. At first, they were dismissed, but patterns began to emerge. Some were arranged in clusters, others aligned with the red ochre stones. Were they counters, offering markers, community signatures? Whatever they were, one thing was clear. They didn't belong to the elite. These were objects made by hands that never touched jade, never sat on thrones, and yet they surrounded the tomb like a silent testimony, a sacred chorus outside a divine solo. This burial wasn't just about the king, it was about the people around him, how they remembered, ritualized, and retold the myth. And perhaps most unsettling, the structure of this entire complex, the tomb, the markers, the feasting grounds, mirrors what we've seen in other, far larger Maya cities. But here, at Chochquitum, it had gone unnoticed, erased, buried, until now. Yet just as the tomb seemed to have revealed all it could, the very earth beneath it began to tell a new tale. Near the southern corner of the burial chamber, a cluster of ancient root traces pointed upward. Thin, gnarled tunnels winding like veins through the limestone. The pattern wasn't random. The roots had grown in deliberate alignment, straight through a crevice carved into the chamber's edge. It wasn't just accidental vegetation. This was where a sacred tree once stood. In Maya cosmology, trees were more than life. They were the cosmic axis. Their roots stretched into the underworld. Their trunks supported the earthly realm, and their branches reached into the heavens. And here, over this forgotten tomb, a single tree had grown, possibly planted during the burial rite itself. Its life was the extension of the king's spirit. Its death, perhaps, marked the fall of the dynasty. Now, microbotanical experts are planning to extract trace pollen and phytoliths from the soil. If they can identify the species, it may reveal if it was the ceiba tree, the world tree of the Maya. If confirmed, this wouldn't be just symbolic. It would rewrite how Maya merged ecology and cosmology in state rituals. The burial site, it turns out, wasn't just a grave. It was a designed landscape, a sacred ecosystem. Surrounding the tomb were faint outlines of raised platforms, once thought to be eroded walls, but soil chemistry revealed elevated phosphate levels, a telltale sign of repeated ritual activity, possibly feasts, bloodletting, or calendrical ceremonies. The elite and the community gathered here, not just to mourn, but to reassert divine authority. Suddenly, Chochquitum is no longer an isolated dot in the jungle. It becomes a focal point in the debate over how Maya power operated. Was it centralized, like a monarchy, or spread across competing city-states? And more importantly, were spiritual landscapes like this one the glue that held regional alliances together? Architecturally, the tomb doesn't resemble nearby burials. It's more elaborate, more precise. The rapid ceiling suggests urgency, perhaps a power vacuum. Yet, the ritual accuracy remains impeccable. That points to a coordinated ruling class, a priesthood or dynasty trained to replicate divine order in stone, regardless of political turmoil above ground. Which raises another question: who ordered this tomb? The inscriptions point to a royal figure, possibly Itzam Kokaj Bahlam, but the glyphs also reference names tied to other Maya cities. Some of them overlap with lineages from Tikal. Others hint at Teotihuacan influence. This was no provincial king. This was someone plugged into a network far larger than Chochquitam. And his tomb, buried in silence for over 1,000 years, may now be the only surviving record of a forgotten political strategy, one based on ritual unification and sacred geography. And yet, the most astonishing revelations may still be microscopic. Residues scraped from the inside of ceremonial vessels are now in analysis. One contained cacao, the sacred chocolate drink used by elite priests and nobles, but another held something more unusual: traces of chili and tobacco, a mix rarely seen outside high-status funerary rites. These ingredients formed a spiritual cocktail, fuel for visions, offerings for the gods, or a bridge to the other world. There's more. Inside a cracked jar, nearly missed among the larger artifacts, archaeologists found degraded fibers and tiny fragments of what may be woven cloth. Radiocarbon dating puts them at nearly 1,700 years old. If confirmed, this could be one of the oldest preserved textiles in the entire Maya region. The patterns, though faded, suggest iconography, matching the jade mask, meaning the ruler may have worn this robe during ritual events. It's not just history. It's costume, performance, theater, frozen in time. And as testing continues, the focus shifts from structure to individual. DNA extraction from the femur bones is underway. If results hold, we may soon know this king's genetic origin, whether he descended from local rulers or came from a more distant bloodline. That changes everything. The team is building a 3D map, not just of the tomb, but of its place within the wider city ruins. Pathways revealed by LiDAR now align with ceremonial sight lines, sunrise corridors, equinox alignments, and water channels that link reservoirs with temples. This wasn't a random jungle burial. It was engineered to mirror the Maya cosmos. Global researchers are now collaborating in real time. AI modeling is simulating the original construction process, while drone scans are creating ultra-precise maps. Even as archaeologists dig, their digital twins are already generating new theories. And the final twist? Beneath the lowest stone of the tomb, radar picked up a second anomaly. Another chamber, unopened, undisturbed. What's inside? No one knows. But one thing is clear. This is no longer just about one king, or one tomb, or one city. This is a buried epic. A missing page from the Maya story finally surfacing from the earth. And as each test, scan, and excavation unfolds, the veil lifts a little more, revealing a civilization far more connected, intentional, and cosmically driven than anyone imagined. So, if you're still watching, you're part of this rediscovery. Hit like, subscribe, and comment below, because the next chamber might change everything we thought we knew.